Welcome to DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blenderhead, Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and we're in the midst of the NBA season. It's Wednesday. We got a 9-game slate today. We had a 7-game slate yesterday. If you didn't play a million Warriors, you probably didn't do well. Well, you should have played a million Warriors. And we'll go over a little bit of yesterday's slate using Results DB, our new Results DB. Brought to you, powered by Fantasy Labs Contest Dashboard. So go check that out, rotogrinders.com/resultsdb. I see you in the chat, you people, right? Give me those thumbs ups. Give me the subscribe buttons. Give me the notification bells. And post your questions in the chat, right? We always need to extend because going over the NBA slate for today doesn't do much when you don't have any news, right? Yesterday, we'd be going over the slate going, I don't know what we're going to do, right? And blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, Curry's out, Wiggins is out, like all the Warriors are out. And then you're playing all these cheap guys. So like, what are we going to talk about? Well, if you have questions, put them in the YouTube chat. Good morning, Infamous Tuck, Matt Mears, Ryan Edwards, Hog Lawrence, John Koch, Trey. Trey's in the chat. The winning lineup, I think, had 5 Warriors or 4 Warriors at least. Right? I think FJ Bourne came out of nowhere last night with Michael Bridges 49.5 points, but like 1, 2, 3, 4. Moody, Poole, Lee, and Juan Toscano Anderson, which, I mean, I guess 19 points for 3,000 was good enough. As long as you have Giannis in your lineup with him, I think that was fine. Take a look at the one below it. And then Michael Bridges out of nowhere. Here's another one. Devin Vassell. Okay. You didn't need this. Yeah, I mean, you didn't need it. Here's a very chalky lineup. Excuse me. That wasn't first. It was actually tied 3 ways. 1, 2, 3, 5 Warriors. Murray, Kuzma, Giannis. This looked like a lot of my lineups. Okay? I had a lot of Dejounte Murray. I had a bunch of Kyle Kuzma. Not as much as Giannis, but he was still in the pool. Because I considered Murray out of all those like pay up options, like you had Murray yesterday, you had like guys like Butler, you had Harden, you had Giannis, like the high range people, but Murray is on the other side of the Warriors game. So like if I'm going to play a lot of Warriors, even though they're all cheap, and even if they got blown out or something like that, they're still going to play a ton of minutes. Why not play the guy on the other side of the game? So I played a lot of Murray plus 3 to 5 Warriors. I had a cap at 5. But like I had at minimum 3 Warriors in every line. Because look out, the most expensive Warrior was Jordan Poole, 5,500. Everyone else is 4,000, 3,200, 3,000. All these guys are playing 30 plus minutes, right? It's hard for them not to get there. It's hard for them not to get 8x, 10x, 12x, right? We saw that in the projections if you had on RotoGrinders. Like the salary adjusted plus minus was ridiculous on all these players. And some people are like, well, how many can you play in one lineup, right? Aren't they negatively correlated to each other? Now, when we went over the same thing yesterday, similar thing yesterday when it comes to like chalk and not chalk. Like that's the wrong way to think about it. Over-owned and under-owned. That's a better way to think of it. So you're not like, well, Jordan Poole's going to be 66. He was 66.8% owned yesterday. You know what he should have been owned? 90-something%. Okay, he had a similar salary-adjusted value that Drummond had the night before, and Drummond was what? He was 80% owned or something. 66.8% owned, under-owned. Damian Lee was 41% owned. Probably should have been 50% owned. Kuminga was about efficiently owned, right? Kevin Looney probably should have been 20% owned. We also had, who else was part of this? We had JTA, right? But like Jordan Poole, it's like, oh, he's 5,500. Well, do I need to play him? It's like, dude, he was projected for like 40 points, median. Should have been like 85%, 90% owned. So he's under-owned. So that's why it's not a matter of who's chalk and who's not chalk. So the same thing has to do with correlation. Players could be negatively correlated and still be together in the winning lineup based on their salary. So you have all these players. You have, okay, how do you play five? Can 5 players on the same team get there? Well, if they're all efficiently priced, probably not. Because what does get there mean? Get there means puts up a score that gives you a big flame emoji, right? 7x, 8x, 10x, something like that. So yeah, like let's say you had like Giannis. Let's take a look at 2 people on the same team. Let's go to exposures. 2 people on the same team, like even like Dinwiddie and Kuzma, for instance. Like at 7,400, like 51 points is a ceiling. That you have a GPP winning type of score with Kuzma, but you don't with Dinwiddie at 28.75, which is like what, 5x, right? Because of their prices. But if Dinwiddie was 3,000, 28 points is great, right? That's almost 10x. If Kuzma was 5,000, it would be 10x. So if you tell me that Spencer Dinwiddie was 3,000 and Kuzma was 5,000, I have no problem playing them together, even though they're negatively correlated. Because how many points do they need? What's their target score do they need? Butler and Adebayo or something like that. Like, if they're both 5,000, it's like, dude, they could put up 50 each, no problem, in the same game, regardless of their salary. So if they're both 5,000, that's 10x for both of them. Play them both together. You get 2 players at 10x at the same time in your lineup, that's fine. But if Butler was 13,000 and Adebayo was 17,000, the 50 points isn't good enough each for them. One of them has to put up 85. And it's very hard for one person to put up 85 and the other person to also put up 85. So the salary matters. So that's why with these Warriors, like their prices were, I mean, how hard is it for Damian Lee to get there at 3,200? What's get there? 25 points? He's playing 32 minutes. Jordan Poole's 5,500. His efficient price on this slate should have been almost 9,000. Right? If Jordan Poole was 9,000 and Damian Lee was 6,000, then can they both get there together in the same game? Because now Jordan Poole at 9,000 needs to put up 60, and Damian Lee at 6,000 needs to put up 40 to 45. Well, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. So in those cases, then you probably wouldn't play them together in a large field GPP. Smaller field stuff, you don't need to have like the nut type of scores. So it's not a matter of like who is negatively correlated to each other. All players on a basketball court are pretty much for a ceiling are negatively correlated to each other. Ones that take each other's minutes are more negatively correlated, right? Because they can only be on the court for X amount of minutes, right? Centers that come out for each other, point guards that come out for each other, assuming that maybe at some points they play together, right? So it can't just be, I can't play the backup point guard. Well, if the backup point guard also closes both halves with the starting point guard, then what do we care? But like you take a look at like today's slate, for instance, okay, as of right now, as of our early morning projections, which obviously don't mean anything because we got 8 hours for nutso stuff to happen between 18 teams today on the slate. So like we have Jetty Osman, right? If Garland's out, I believe Garland's out. Do we have a definitive? Yeah, I mean, he's not in the projections, right? So I believe he's out. So we go to Cleveland. Like Osman is 4,600. He has a salary adjusted plus minus of 8. Okay. His median score is 34. If you got 34 from a $4,600 player, you're doing pretty good, right? Okay. That's the median. So it's quite possible for someone else on his team to also have 40 plus points. Now, if Jetty Osman was 6,000, if he was 6,000, then it's going to be hard for him and Evan Mobley or Jared Allen or someone else to also get a 7 to 10x type of score in the same game. But since his price is so cheap in comparison, it's like, Like, dude, he could get 35 points, fantasy points, while Mobley gets 50. No problem. Or Allen or whatever, any of these guys, whatever. So for a slate like this, if this was the ending projection, I don't mind playing two guys from the same team. Or even three. Possibly. Because of the pricing. Osman doesn't count anymore. We go to another team. Let's go to Washington. I mean, look at the salary adjusted value. Okay, now that it's not 12 points like it was for the Warriors. There's no reason why Dinwiddie and Harrell can't both get there for their salary. The key thing is for their salary. If Dinwiddie was 7,000 and Harrell was 5,500, that would be much harder because they need to put up more points for those salaries. If Dinwiddie puts up if they both put up 7x? That's 42 points for Dinwiddie and about 30 points for Harrell. Yeah, I mean, look at their medians. Their medians are close enough as it is. Their smash percentages are in the 40s. They could both do it together easily. And Kuzma could possibly hit a ceiling. Or he probably wouldn't play Gafford and Harrell together. Caldwell Pope or something. Washington is the type of team I could play three players from in a large field GPP. Probably ideal would be two, but I could play three from. So if we go back to yesterday's scenario with the Warriors, if you sorted in our projections by salary adjusted plus minus, which is what RGV is, we had like Jordan Poole was like 14. Then we had like Damian Lee was 8. And JTA was 8. Like everyone else was 8. I think Moody was 4 or something. And they like if you sorted by the entire slate, like they were the five out of 6 of them were the 5 highest on the entire slate. So for their prices, can they all get there? Yeah, why not? Get there. GPP ceiling type of score. Yeah, at their prices. You bump them up $1,000, $2,000 in salary, then that wouldn't be the case. Then you'd only be playing maybe 2 of them in your lineup. Because then they'd start eating from each other's ceilings. Look, the winning lineup yesterday had Juan Toscano-Anderson that had 19.25 points. That's still getting there for 3,000. Damian Lee went for what? Does this look like? Well, 11x. Jordan Poole went for 9x. Moses Moody went for 11x. I mean, like, it was at 3,000. If Moses Moody was 6,000, 11x is what? 6,600? 66 points? He's not going to get 66 points. And if he does get 66 points, Damian Lee ain't going to get 66 points also, right? Unless the Warriors put up 300 points or something. So it's all related to salary. So if everyone was efficiently priced on the team, it would be much harder for 3 players to get a GPP winning ceiling. Be tougher. Obviously tougher for 2 also, but one could. You want basically the best case scenario is you play one player from the team, and they're the ones that get all the production, right? Right. You go to Washington, right? You play. I'm going to play Dinwiddie, or let's go to a more efficiently priced team. Do we have let's see, the Knicks? Yeah, the Knicks are probably overpriced. Houston, right? Brooklyn. Let's see. Denver doesn't do much. Let's see. Portland, Indiana. Philadelphia with Embiid back. Yeah, even with Embiid back, like you wouldn't play like at these salaries, at these projections, you probably would not play more than one 76er. Like you wouldn't play Embiid and Harris in the same line. I mean, can they both get there? Yes. Just it's a much lower probability. At their prices at 8,300 and 12,000. If Embiid was 8,000 and Harris was 4,000, you'd have no problem because these salary adjusted values would be ridiculous. But at this current point, you look at the Philadelphia 76ers and go, I don't see how I play more than I don't see how you play. Most likely you play 1, 2 is doable, but I don't see how you play 3 from a large field GPP standpoint. That 3 players at their efficient prices, because they're pretty much Embiid and Curry, right? Embiid is slightly underpriced at 12,000, right? Because we can see he's 1 point over salary adjusted value. Seth Curry is slightly overpriced, but he's close enough to efficient salary. And then Maxey and Harris are a little bit overpriced. Tyball's a little overpriced. Then we get down to the bottom where they're very overpriced. So it's like, can Maxey, Curry, and Embiid all get GPP winning ceilings? Can Maxey get 50, Curry get 42, and Embiid get 72 in the same game? Yeah, I guess so. It's much harder, all 3, but 2 of them could get there, right? I could see Curry and Embiid maybe both getting there. I could see Harris and Curry or something like that, some combination. But this would be the case where the negative correlation isn't worth playing more than 1 and maybe 2. Based on their projections. And that's obviously when playing Embiid and Drummond in the same lineup, they come out for each other. So this is the type of thing where it's like, oh, if I'm playing Sixers, I'm probably only playing 1. I would personally only play 1 in a lineup. And I'd set in my max. We go here, players per team. I go to Philly, and I put in 1. You could also make a group of them, right? You could say, oh, max 1 in a group, but it's easy to just go dink, and I'm done here, right? So let's say the case of like Washington, like we saw before. Like here, Washington, it's like, I think I could play 2, right? You got the top 5 guys here, kind of. Maybe even the top 4. Dinwiddie, Harrell, Kuzma, Gafford. Now, Harrell and Gafford, I probably will not play together because essentially they're not going to play on the court at the same time. So because of that, and they project decently. So maybe they do show up in some lineups together. So I'll go in here and I'll create a group of Harrell and Gafford, right? Create a group, max players, min players 0, max players 1. Use at most 1 player. So it'll never give me Harrell and Gafford in the same line. They come out for each other. They're cheap enough that they both could get there. Truthfully, if this was a 2 or 3 game slate, I wouldn't mind as much playing both of them together. But it's a 9 game slate. The opportunity cost is high. But this is the easy negative correlation. The guys that just literally come in and out for each other. You'd rather have Harrell get into foul trouble and then Gafford go nuts in 36 minutes and vice versa than play both and they both play 24 minutes. But then I take a look at everything else. I go Dinwiddie, Harrell, Gafford, Kuzma. Right? I go, well, I don't mind playing Dinwiddie, Harrell. I don't mind playing Dinwiddie, Gafford. I don't mind playing Kuzma, Harrell. I don't mind playing Kuzma, Gafford, but do I play Kuzma and Dinwiddie together? Maybe. Maybe not. Do I play 3 together? Do I play Dinwiddie, Kuzma, and one of the centers? You could. So do you play 3? You can play 3. If you wanted to just set max 3 right here, I think you could get away with it. You just set max 3, so you're just basically getting at most Dinwiddie plus Kuzma plus one of the centers. But let's say you say, I don't want to play Dinwiddie and Kuzma together. Right? I don't want to play more than 2 Wizards. Which I think is probably more ideal than 3. So you put in here 2, right? Caps it out there. And then you go back here and you see, okay, if you put in max 2, that means you could get Dinwiddie, Harrell, Dinwiddie, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, Gafford. Harrell, Kuzma, Dinwiddie, right? But you could still get Dinwiddie and Kuzma together in the same line. And you go, can they both get there? 5,800 Dinwiddie and a 7,500 Kuzma. They can, yes. But it's a little less probable. So you could choose, if you want, to now separate Dinwiddie and Kuzma. Go into the build rules, go into player groups, and go, I don't want Dinwiddie and Kuzma in the same line. Right? Now you can't have, now the max 3, you can't have 3 players. And there you go. Because at these salaries, I think 2 people could get there. Possibly 3. Like I said, if you didn't mind the 3, then play 3 guys. Add Caldwell Pope to the mix. But like on the Knicks or something, like look at the horribly projected players. All of these guys are overpriced. So would you play Randall and Barrett together? Not at these prices. I mean, they don't project all that. I mean, minus 3.5, minus 3.5. Fournier is minus 6. So would you play them both in the same lineup? No, they're overpriced as it is. Harder for them to hit a 7x plus type of ceiling. So for the Knicks, I'd go, the Knicks, even if I do get a Knick in my lineup, I don't want two of them. I mean, you'd be sacrificing a lot of projection, but let's say I'm going to sacrifice 15 points of projection and then end up with Randall and Barrett in the same lineup. Because that could end up happening. So you go into build rules and you say, I only want the max of one Knick. Right? But it's all based on the pricing and the projection. So we go to like Indiana. And we go, okay, I could play two people here. Right? Take a look at here. The top end. Jackson, LeVert, Duarte, Holiday. Right? These guys are all 30-minute players. And I go, okay, I could play two Pacers. Right? So you go back into build rules and you go, okay, I could use two Pacers. Maybe we don't mind the three Washington players. Three Washington, two Pacers. Let's go back to the build. Get rid of this Kuzma, Dinwiddie. One right there. So I can go through. This is based on these current projections. Go to Orlando. Okay, I can play two here. Two is doable. Max two. You could be very stringent and say, no, I only want max one. You could. But this is how you determine it. Go, okay, Orlando. I can play two guys from. Go, you set that for two. Max two. Philadelphia, we took care of. No, or did we? We could play one. This looks like a one. Could be a two, but maybe we play one based on projections. Charlotte. Yeah, Charlotte doesn't project all that well. So Charlotte's going to be a one. Boston doesn't really project all that well either. So Boston, Charlotte, I'd go into my build rules. I go 1-1. Give me max one. I don't want Tatum and Brown at their prices. Can they both have 65 at the same time? They can. It happens. It happens every so often, but not so much. Not a high probability. We go to Memphis. Memphis projects poorly also. Same for the Knicks, right? So those are the teams that I would have max one of. If I have anyone from, right? They project poorly enough, then maybe I don't get anything. Right? Look at Houston. Garbage. Cleveland, we already say we could do three on Cleveland, right? Because of Osman. Or is it more like a tour? No, we could do three. Three max. OKC, garbage. Dallas. You have Luka there, but you could probably play one of the other guys also. So I say two for Dallas, one. Two for Dallas. Where's Dallas? Two for Dallas. One for OKC. At the current projections, I always say this because someone will listen and watch this 5 hours from now when a million things have changed and go, oh, well, why'd you say this? Well, based on the 6 a.m. projections this morning. So Brooklyn, Sacramento. Brooklyn, we're probably not going to play Irving and Harden together. So this is probably a one. The Sacramento, yeah, pretty much one there also. Denver, Utah, this looks like a one. Utah, Utah could be a two or even a three. Okay, so let's go there. Maybe we don't mind three on Utah, being that they have guys out. One on Denver, one on Brooklyn, one on Sacramento. And we got the Portland Lakers game. Portland, okay, Portland, I would say two is better than three, but I mean, you could do three if you want. I would say two for Portland and two for the Lakers. And maybe make a group so you're grouping out Westbrook and Davis so they're not both in the same. Because they're both expensive players. You could get away with it. I'm just going through this very quickly. Maybe you have 2-2. But that's how you would determine. So people ask, is this guy negatively correlated to that guy? And is this like, they're all negatively correlated, right? There's 48 minutes in a game. There's only bucket. If this guy shoots a bucket, it's taking points away from someone else on the court, right? So they're all technically negatively correlated on a play-by-play basis. It's like, at their price, what's the target ceiling for GPP? That's a number for their price. They're 5,000. You're aiming for like 35 plus. Can that guy get 35 plus while this other guy also gets 7x for 9,000? Could get 65 points. The answer is higher probability. Then you can play them together. The answer is lower probability. It's probably best to separate them. So you're not playing those guys together. That's it. So the price will dictate. If Jetty Osman was 8,000 today, number one, you wouldn't be playing him. But then you definitely wouldn't be playing him alongside Jared Allen also, or Kevin Love, or whoever else on the Cleveland. The hell is still there? Mobley or Goodwin or something. But only because he's underpriced. It's easier for him to get there. So I'm not concerned myself of who's negatively correlated to Jetty Osman. Unless it's someone that comes on the court and takes his other 13 minutes, which they'll overlap a bit. So Goodwin will overlap with Osman as it is. So that's what you should be thinking about when it comes to correlation. Because we had that yesterday with the Warriors. I saw tons of chat in our Discord about how many is too many. I said 5 is too many. 6 is too many. That's pretty much all of them. I said, yeah, that's how cheap they are. They're going to be playing 48 minutes. There's 48 times 6. There's 200 and whatever minutes to go around, and there's only like basically 7 players in their rotation and 2 G League guys that may not get in that much time in. And they're all nearly min price outside of maybe Poole and Looney. They're going to be on the court for 32 minutes. How do they not get to 30 points? If you raise their prices by double, then you would play one of them max. Well, I thought they're negatively correlated. Yeah, to their ceiling for their salary. Like Embiid and Harris. Embiid at 12,000 and Harris at 8,300. Embiid needs to put up like 70 points at least for a ceiling at that salary. Harris has to put up 55. There aren't that many games where Embiid puts up 75 and Harris puts up 55. There are some. It happens. It does. But not as often. But if, let's say, Embiid was 10,000 and Harris was 6,000. Well, now Embiid only needs to put up like 65 maybe. And Harris at 6,000 only has to put up 40. And we've seen we've seen games where Embiid has 65 and Harris has 40. That happens way more often. Okay, so that's doable to play them together. Even though technically the correlation, the number, the R between the two players is still the same for their ceilings, for those raw points. The salaries are changing. You can't play Giannis and Middleton in the same line. Well, of course you can if they're both 5,000. Sure, yeah. At their current efficient prices, you're right. It's going to be very hard for both of them to get GPP winning ceilings. Going through the YouTube chat. Kickstar says, I couldn't believe Bridges smashed. It happens. Things happen. Outliers happen. Oh, let's see. Kid Cloud Kicker. I was following all the nonsense coming out of Washington. Dinwiddie wants out. I like Cole Anthony better anyway. I pivoted. End result, 18 more points for $700. I was only playing 2 lineups. Everyone told me it was bad process. Yeah, I would agree with you. In the long run. It's bad. It's horrible process. That's the process of a losing player. You know why? I don't watch basketball. I don't know what most of these players even look like. I'm wildly profitable in basketball. You know why? Because it's a math game. So I don't care. Dinwiddie wants out. What do I care? I just all I'm doing is looking at the numbers. Now, Cole Anthony wasn't a bad, didn't project poorly yesterday. If you played a lineup with Cole Anthony instead of Spencer Dinwiddie, and your total lineup projected and owned at the right range for the contest you're in, that's perfectly fine. Because remember, we're not playing players, we're playing lineups. So now you have two bad processes. That you thought about a player and you use something that was not quantifiable. So yes, so that's a horrible process. And if you continue to do so, you will continue to lose. In the long run. Let's see. Masher, if a lineup is half as owned as the optimal, how do you figure out number of points projection to give up for a given slate? I know every show is about this trade-off. Hearing you think out this example would help. It depends on how many lineups are in between the two lineups. So like, for instance, if I were to build, let's see, I gotta, let me reset all of this. I just reset all. Where's my reset all button? Oh, okay, it's in the build settings, reset all NBA settings. How many lineups are in between those lineups? Right. So if we're going to build, let's say 300 lineups with no constraints, no nothing. Right. One salary doesn't even have just the 49K, whatever. Just nothing. We're just going to run 300 lineups. Right. I got everything here. Doesn't matter how many players per team, what the ownership is. We run it. Well, I still need to put in something. Let's see. Okay. Put in some zeros to make it run. So basically what this is going to do is spit out the 300 optimal lineups. The top projected lineups from 1 to 300. What's the point difference between number 1 and number 300? What's the point difference between number 1 and number 6,000 and number 15,000 and number 50,000? Right? Because if you don't play Osman, or you don't play Luka, if you don't play Osman, or you don't play Dinwiddie, you don't play Harrell, you're going to start to be giving up a whole bunch of projected points. You're going to be giving up like maybe 15. If you don't play any of those three, you're probably going to give up around 14 points. How much ownership are you gaining by doing that? Well, there's your start. How many lineups are in between them? You're trying to come up with a number, Masher, and the answer is there is no number. I've said this multiple times. The concept is the lower the projection, you should be getting lower ownership with it. Well, what's the exact sweet spot? Well, if I knew the answer, I'd have $17 trillion because I'd win every slate. So obviously there's no correct answer. Okay, run 300 lineups. Okay. Top fantasy point, 293.75. Lowest has a 286.85. Okay, so the top 300 lineups are separated by what? 7 points? Okay. Yeah, about 7 points. So, and if you were to drop less than 7 points, you're still going to be within the top 300 lineups possible. So if you're playing large field GPP, you're probably going to be sacrificing more than 7 points. You may be playing some of these lineups, some of these 300. But most likely, you're not going to be playing top 300 projected lineups. And if you see here that in the top 300 projected lineups, Jetty Osmond's in 100% of them, in all 300. Dinwiddie's in 81%. Harrell's in 80%. Luka's in 95%. What's the, out of this 300 set, what is the lowest owned one in total? 201 at 287. So within the top 300 lineups, you're sacrificing about 6 points to gain, it's the highest, to gain about 35 percentage points in ownership. So you use that as a guide. In the next 300, what does that look like? And in the next 300, what does that look like? Like, I'm going to sacrifice 20 points in projection to get X amount of ownership. Well, that, some slates, that lineup is like the 1200th best lineup. Best projected lineup in total. Some slates, it's the 12,000th best lineup. So on the slates where it's the 1200th best lineup, that may be fine. That amount of projection for that ownership may be fine. So still, like, how much more can you, you're just still playing a top 1200 lineup. And on other slates, that lineup that you're giving up 20 points of projection is so far down that you'd be nuts to be giving up that much projection. And you could tell what slates they are. The more efficiently priced the slate is, the less projection you should be willing to sacrifice for ownership. Because here, in order to, the high-owned players are going to be the mispriced players, the underpriced players like Osmond, Luka, Dinwiddie, Harrell, Carter, Monk, Clarkson. I mean, like all these guys, right? But we do, on a slate where there are inefficiently priced players, you're probably going to have to play some of them to keep your projection up, right? So, like, the best lineup right now, right? 293.75. Let's get rid of all these guys. Everything with the green. I'm just going to literally get rid of all the guys that are positively, that are inefficiently priced too cheap, right? Even Karis LeVert, who's only at 0.18, right? I got rid of all those guys. So here's a slate. We got rid of all those guys. What is the lineup from not playing any of them, right? 293.75 with all those guys in turns into the optimal lineup is 257.58. Okay. But we take a look at this slate. Like, let's say this was the slate. A lot of guys, and we can even add some guys back in that are close to this line, right? Just not the highest guys, right? Let's add LeVert, Anthony. Let's add some of these. Anthony Davis, right? So we take, if this was the slate, we got rid of all those guys above them, and this was the slate. Look how many players are very close to one another, right? When we ran this slate with all the players in the pool, the Osmonds, the Lukas, the Dinwiddies, the guys that are inefficiently underpriced, we saw the top 300 was a difference of 7 points, right? Number 1 to number 300 was 7 points. Let's run it again. All right, I make sure I got everything. Yeah, everything's here. Let's run it again and just have a lot of guys that are just like, okay, these guys are mostly efficiently priced. I mean, like, just who's the best play on this slate? I don't know. They're all fairly close to each other. We don't get guys with RGBs of 3, 4, 5, 8, where it's like obviously they're underpriced by a certain extent. So we're going to build 300 now. Scott Rotter, does the person making the projections factor in non-math elements? For example, who may get more minutes between yes. Our projections team puts in the minutes in the rotations. But then it simulates based on their production with the assist rates and all the rebound rates and everything. because everything has to come out to 100 between the 5 players on the court. Then our system, our algorithm goes through and runs 10,000 simulations, and that's how the projections come out. But yes, human beings have to put in the minutes. How many minutes does Harold play versus Gafford? That a human being puts that in. And the projections team knows basketball 800 times more than I do. That's why I subscribed to RotoGrinders before I was even here. So yeah, the minutes. If you don't agree with the minutes, then just change the minutes. But yes, there's no math that goes into the minutes. Other than the algorithmic projections that come out early in the morning does. Based on some like regression model. So it all equals the same, but then they'll come in. The projections team usually by 11 noon, around my showtime, start making manual adjustments. So it's not all the computer's not coming up with the minutes projections. Right, because some teams play big, some teams play small. Right, we got Andy, we got Noto, we got Jamino, we got SBK, we got people that the basketball knowledge of the projections team trumps me by 8 million. So like, what do I know? I don't know. They're gonna put it. The numbers are gonna be put in. Well, if this guy's on the court with the same time as this guy, is the rebound rate's gonna change? That's all done. So yes, it's based on the rotation for today. They may go a little big or a little small or play 2 guards or whatever. Basketball people take care of that. So since the basketball people are taking care of the numbers that are being put in, what am I doing? I'm just using the numbers. Okay, so we took out all of those like inefficiently underpriced players and ran 300 lineups now. So in the first run, with all the players in, the difference between 1 and 300 was about 7 points. This is now most of the salaries are about efficiently priced. About. Top lineup 260. Bottom lineup 250, 258, pretty much. Right? 257.9 to 260.9. 3-point difference between the first lineup and the 300th lineup. So what's the difference between the 300th lineup and the 600th lineup? Maybe only another 3 points, maybe even less. So what's the difference between lineup 1 and lineup 10,000 when everyone is priced efficiently? 1 in 10,000 may be a difference of 20 points, maybe. But once we start adding everyone else back in, the difference between 1 and 10,000 could be 42 points. So we see here that when there's so many lineups packed together because everyone's fairly efficiently priced, you're probably not giving up as much projection. You probably don't need to give up as much projection for the ownership, because the ownership will sometimes on those types of slates end up being too condensed, right? They look at, you look on a slate with like this and you go, well, I got to play Daniel Gafford because why not, right? He's 3,100 at center. And he's the best play out of a bunch of, he's the marginally better play than 6 other people. So what ends up happening a lot of times is that the marginally better play is 40% off. When the difference between the top 5 plays at that position or whatever should be like 18%, 16%, 14%, 12%. What ends up happening, it ends up being 36%, 14%, 8%, 6%, 2%. When it really, because the differences between these players is not projection-wise is not that dramatic. When we add all these people back in, yeah, Osmond should be high owned. Dinwiddie should be high owned. Harrell should be. Monk, assuming he plays, should be higher owned. Well, he projects for 3 or 4 points median-wise more than other players. Well, you should be higher owned. So for not playing him, you're going to be sacrificing more ownership. But the more that the players are closer to their efficient prices, if the ownership isn't efficient, you should just be exploiting that completely. Masher. So given its inefficient pricing, are you going to have more concentrated pool of players on FanDuel? You shouldn't care about how concentrated your pool is. You should be building lineups. Concentration and all that's all diversification. That's all risk tolerance. So there's no such thing as be as concentrated as you want. Just build good lineups that are projected and owned at the levels that they should be for the contest that you're in. Once you start understanding that, once it finally clicks, you know how many people in the past, I've been here for 3-4 years at RotoGrinders? You know how many people, not like I say, 95% of people aren't going to do the work. The 5% of people that do, when it finally clicks, they go to me and they go, oh my God, I understand why you call everyone stupid. Right? When it finally clicks, you go, oh my God, 95% of everything that I've ever done in the past was a waste of time. You go, it almost becomes too simple. You almost question how does not everyone, why isn't everyone doing this? How hard is it to play DFS? This is you could play in 10 minutes. Right? Some people think it's like, oh, you get to spend 8 hours a day going no, I could play any slate in 5 to 10 minutes. Basketball slate, I could show up at 10 minutes before lock and make probably better lineups than you can for the contest, whatever contest you're in. Most of the work is done for you by the projections team here at RotoGrinders. As long as you understand the game of playing DFS. And that's why, if you don't want to go through my hundreds upon hundreds of hours of shows like this, get nice in one little structured package. The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, How to Think Like a Professional DFS Player. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. Completely revolutionize your process. Right? It has all these, right? There's math involved, but not heavy math. But mathematical concepts. Introduction, game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, psychology, miscellaneous stuff. A lot of it is just basic statistics. You took a basic statistics and probability class. That's what pretty much DFS is. And once you learn that it's about lineups and not players, then you don't have to worry about players anymore. You really don't. The only time I worry about players is what I was going through before with the build rules. Can 2 people get there at the same time for their salary adjusted value? Right? Well, in the Knicks, they project poorly. Probably not. 1 player, max. If I get anyone from the Knicks. Cavs, I could do 2 or 3 because of Osman. Washington, I could do 2 or 3 because of Dinwiddie and Harrell. But do I need to know Dinwiddie and Harrell? I don't even know. I need to know who they are. I don't. I need to know that Harrell and Gafford both come in and out of each other, right? I need to know that about basketball, right? And all that rotation stuff you could get you just by the game logs. Or we have court IQ, right? Like I could look if I wanted to. We have this on RotoGrinders. Right, I could go through and I could do any query I want and look at any game, right? Warriors Spurs from last night, right? And I could see who came in and out for each other, right? I could look here. I go, Murray was in, Primo came in, Walker came in, right? And even if I didn't know the players, didn't know nothing, never heard of these people, and go, okay, well, Vassell typically comes in for Derek White, but then he comes back in. Yeah, maybe the Spurs isn't a good example to look at. Denver, Minnesota. Right, it's like, okay, Bryn Forbes and Jeff Green don't play together. Right? J. Michael Green and Will Barton don't play together. Obviously, the fourth quarter doesn't count. This is a blowout. Right? I could just look at these. Jared Vanderbilt and Torian Prince. Look, they come in and out for each other. So most likely I don't play them together. I don't need to know anything about basketball. I can just look at this. Edwards and Reed kind of don't play together. Noel and McDaniels don't. I mean, like, there you go. So that's all I would need to know. So make sure they're not together in the same lineup or something. If I wanted to do that. I mean, if you're playing this every day, you get a sense of what the rotations are anyway. But like, I don't watch basketball. I don't remember the last time I even watched an NBA. I even had NBA on at all. At all. I think for maybe a playoff game last year. I wasn't playing DFS. I was like, game 7 or so. It was something in the finals. It was something. It was whatever. I think I watched the last half or something. And that may have been the last time. And then the time before that was, I don't know. Who knows? Every once in a while, if I have a major sweat or something like that, and it's a late game, I'll put the last half for the whatever game. So I could look or whatever. Like, other than that, I see no reason to watch. Everything, you get all the information here anyway. And we have a projections team that takes care of all the minutes and everything anyway. I mean, so it's just like, here are the numbers. Put the numbers together better than other people put the numbers together, and over the long run, make money. There you go. That's it. Masher, I work strictly in terms of lineups, but my volatility is insane. 10K weekly swings basically the norm. Yeah, that would be welcome to DFS. That's GPP play in DFS. Would like to diversify to get that down. Okay, so that the more you diversify, the more you're sacrificing expected value to reduce your variance, which is fine. But what level to do that at is up to you. If you study sharper players, there are some sharp players that have no problem having basically they make 150 lineups and they all look fairly the same, and they just rotate like one or two guys. So they pit like, it's not like they have a core group of like 10 players they play, and then a bunch of little ones, and then just like, if that hits, they got 150 outs for the nuts. But if something goes wrong, two of those guys bomb, all their lineups go to the bottom. So their swings will be way dramatic. You'll see a slate once a season where they win like everything. They're in first, second, fourth, but you also see plenty of you'll see 20 slates where they put in 150 entries and cash none of them. Literally none. They're all at the bottom. You can play. Those are still plus EV lineups. Those are still great lineups. But the portfolio of 150, the lineups individually are correlated with each other a lot. So if their lineups do well, a lot of them will bunch up towards wherever they are. Middle, top of the payout curve. Or you could decide to, out of the 10,000 lineups that you could make that are plus EV or whatever, that you can make more diverse, have more different combinations of players, different types of lineups that are higher, that are higher owned and project well. Some that are really low owned and project poorly. Those are the high variance lineups, and you could play a whole slew, 150 different types, 20, 50, whatever the amount that you play. You could do that. If we played this out over 1 million times, both types of lineup portfolios end up with the same amount of money at the end anyway. Just a matter of how much percentage of your bankroll are you playing, that can you survive those types of swings? Or even if you have the bankroll to survive those swings, do you want those swings? I personally don't. I play a bit more diversified. Not as a strategy, it's just a risk tolerance. Also, I don't play 150 lineups, right? It keeps my sanity. I'll play 50 lineups tonight. But that concentrated player pool, when you talk like that, that's all diversification, and there's no correct answer to that. Should you play a concentrated player pool of players that project poorly? No. Should you play a diverse one poorly projected? No, neither of that either. You still need to build good lineups. And there are different types of plus EV lineups. And some sharp players play a higher variance macro strategy, meaning that, they're going to play 200 NBA slates and going to play really condensed, really high variance stuff. And it's like, all they need to do is like hit it big on like 2 or 3 slates, 4 or 5 slates, maybe. And they're saying they could lose all their money on the other 195 slates and be fine and be profitable. But you could go through 100, you could go 100 slates right down and be down $750,000. Be down $1 million. I've seen in NBA. I know people personally, $1 million downswings. And at the end of the season, they're up $280,000, which is great. Okay, that sounds good to me. But that process of getting there, right? It's a lot of lose and woo, big win. Lose, big win. That's GPP play in general. But how much the downswings are compared to the upswings are all, how much diversification are you doing? Masher, who are among the pros plays with high concentration? I would look in results DB and you could figure it out yourself, right? Just go into results DB and look for the players that are like, oh, they have like 90% of like 5 different guys, right? Or like they look at their concentration. Like, so and so was the chalk, and they have 98% of that guy. They have 78% of this guy. They have 58% of that guy. And it's like, wow, okay, they pretty much played like 150 lineups that have a very small amount, and then they have like 1%, 2% of a whole bunch of people. And then there are others where you look at their exposure, and it's like, wow, they have 68 players and no one higher exposed than 30%. So they're playing extreme diversity. Just fine. As long as their individual lineups are fine, doesn't matter. Tibor Kovacs, remember you playing high entry fee, small size, single entries, and having lots of success? I don't know if you consider lots of success profitable. Do you still enter such contests? The $400 30? No, I don't enter 30-man contests. No, the $400 30. Is there such a thing? Typically, I'm still entering. I'm still doing the Showtime, the $100 Showtime. Like they have the Splash, the $200 3 max when they offer it. I'll play that. A lot of times now I'm playing the 20 max, the $4 20 max. I'll play 20, 25 entries into the $15 large field. Just my natural strengths are more geared towards large field contests. Small field is like less swings or whatever. But it's still it always comes back to I look at the lineups in overall in the large field stuff, and there's just way more edge there than there is in the smaller field contests. Even though realizing that edge is the tough part. I find that the large field contests are essentially rake free. But the amount of lineups that are in it that I find to not be competing for first place, which is what I'm competing for. That's always been, if you listen to the Theory of DFS podcast, that's always been the struggle of like, yeah, my edge is in the large field stuff with the weakest players. But it's a pursuit of trying to win 1 or 2 of them a year for all of your profit, which if you're good, on average, you could do, which I have been doing, right? But it's a pain in the ass to go like 4 months and be just like lose. Little win, lose. Like it's the in-between parts where you're sitting there going, sucks to have to like wait for that big upswing. I'd rather it be a little bit more consistent, which is why the smaller field stuff, you'll be a little bit more consistent, but the strengths of the fields are much higher. So that's that balance of what do I want to do? But my strengths are geared towards beating weaker players and having leverage for large field contests and not small field stuff. So that's why I'll play single entry small field stuff for a little bit, and then eventually it's like why aren't I going after the play? Like why aren't I going after the weakest players in the lobby? The recreational guys put in $15 lineups on the toilet. There's enough of them. You don't have to play 150 in the lineups. Okay, so maybe by the time the 7 o'clock comes around, Jetty Osmond won't even be chalk anymore. Maybe it won't even matter. 8 million things are going to happen between now and then, but they'll cover it for you on Grinders Live. That's coming up around 5 o'clock later today on the YouTube channel, as well as Crunch Time for premium members. So give me those thumbs ups. Let me thumbs on your way out the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when all of our shows go live here. And I'll see you tomorrow reviewing this slate that we're going to play. That nothing I say right now is going to matter for 7 hours from now. And answering your DFS strategy questions as always on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.